Hey guys, this is Darius from Justice League Swag, and I'm doing my Narukami Vanquisher premium deck profile. We got top 8 at Springfest this past May, and we went undefeated in Swiss and went #1 in top 8. Fortunately, we didn't get the top 8 dub, but over triggers is a thing. But anyway, this deck performed really well in Swiss. It got clutch wins when I needed to, and it also got very dominant wins when I needed it to. So I decided to do a deck profile on it, and I hope you guys enjoy. So first, we're going to start off with the zeros and triggers. So of course, the starter here, we got Spark Kid Dragoon. He's been my starter since I've been playing Narukami when it first came out in V Premium. So he just been riding with me since then, and I'm going to continue to use him as my starter for the foreseeable future. Next zero we have is Shadow Element Bikun. Bikun comes in clutch, man. For all these decks that have Sentinel restriction, this card comes in play, especially when we was entering a meta where a lot of decks have Vanguards that attack more than once. You want to run at least one Bikun because it blocks the Vanguard or any type of attack if your Vanguard attacked twice that turn. So it can come in play when your opponent hits like the Dragon Empire over trigger, make it restand. You can use it as a pretty much as a pseudo perfect guard. So essentially you run 4 of the regular perfect guards that you use, and then this can be a pseudo 5th perfect guard essentially. So yeah, Bikun came in clutch, and it definitely got me good defensive force when I was needing a defensive card. So next we're gonna have the over trigger from Dragon Empire. It is the Dragon Deity King of Resurgence Drag Vader. I hit this guy on grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. It's a really good over trigger. I really like the Dragon Empire one. Another attack is always good, especially in premium, because you want to add as much pressure as you can. So I hit him. A lot of people say, well, you know, if you hit him on grade 1, grade 2, it's not good. I hit this on grade 1, and I dealt my opponent to 3 damage by the end of my grade 1 turn. So, and that was my first swinging turn. So just imagine playing against Vanquishers, specifically Narukami, being dealt to 3 by the end of their first grade 1 turn. You pretty much got the game. Unless they pull some miracle, which my opponent didn't, I pretty much had the entire game in my hand, just hitting this on my first grade 1 swing. So I think Drag Vader is a very underrated over trigger, and it comes in clutch when you need it to. Next, we have 4 of the Hill Guardians Blitz Knuckle Dragon. The reason why I run 4 is because in the late game scenario, if you need a grade 3 to stride, you can just drop the Hill Guardian for stride. Other than that, early game, a lot of the decks uses V Premium Vanguards, and they do a lot on their first grade 3 turn. So the Hill Guardians come in clutch so you don't get rushed early game, because there's nothing worse than going into your opponent's stride turn and you're at 3 damage. So this kind of helps mitigate it and you can search it with your grade 3 searcher. So it's kind of a plus all around. So I run 4 just because I want to make sure that I see it early, and I want to make sure that if I have to draw a hill trigger late, it's at least a grade 3 that I can drop for stride. Next, I'm running 3 Rumble Dagger Draco Kid. It's the stride crit for Narukami. That's pretty much all it does. It's a stride crit. Acts as a grade 3 when you need to use it to stride. Pretty much a staple if you're running it in any Narukami deck. Next, I'm running 2 Wyvern Guard Golds. The reason why I'm running 2 is because 1, the deck draws a lot thanks to Stun versus ability, as well as running Excel 2. So you don't really want to hit too many draw triggers in this deck because you can deck out very quickly, and Narukami has no real way to put cards back besides running a Legion. So you want to make sure that you limit your draws, and another reason why I'm running 2 is because I'm running 2 of another perfect guard that I'll discuss later. So 2 draw triggers, always good to go. Next, I'm running 2 Dragon Dancer Paulinas. This is the +10 in draw crit. The reason why I'm running 2 of her is because you want to fill the soul with any type of asset that you can, and late game or mid game, this card can come in clutch, because the one moment where you think you used up all your soul for, say, stun versus ability or for voltage shreds ability, you go in there, you're like, oh snap, I did do a +10 and draw the turn before. Let me use that to soul blast. So it comes in clutch when you need soul, because believe it or not, Narukami can use up a lot of soul very quickly if you don't pay attention to it. So I tech this in there just to make sure that I still have the crit pressure, but I also have the +10 and draw just in case I need it. Next, the last of the triggers is I'm running 4 fronts. Now, some people will go very critical with the Narukami build. I'm a very, overall, I like to stall out my opponent as much as can. Like, I can kill you as fast as possible with this deck, but I like to be able to have a survivability with my decks. A lot of people go all swords and no shield. That's not me. I'm going to have a balanced build with my deck builds, and so I run 4 fronts, because fronts can be killer, especially in a deck like Vanquisher, where you have all these multiple attacks going off, and then you have a lot of abilities. And then also, if you run Cho'os in your deck, Cho'o can become a 34k beat stick on a cell marker, and then if you hit 2 of these, it's almost GG essentially. And then plus they're 20k shield, so late game, if you need a 20k shield and you're running all hill gardens like I do, if you need a 20k shield, you got a front trigger. So all in all, and especially when your opponent is rushing you early, so you have the Hill Guardians for either the +10 or the -2 crit, and then you combo it with the 20k fronts, that you're good to go when it comes to guarding. So now I'm going to go into the grade 1. So my first grade 1 I'm running is Dragon Dancer Regina. I'm running one of her because a lot of times when I was fighting against force decks, I found that the +1k definitely matters. So this card makes it where even though my front is getting +10, I can give 3 units plus an extra 5. So just imagine I'm going to my Vanquisher turn and I have Cho'o on the board, and I can put her into the soul. My opponent has 1 or less front row rear guards, put into the soul, give 3 units plus 5. So now that Cho'o goes from a 24k to a 29k, it makes the guarding from a 15k shield to a 20k shield. So you either 20k shield that Cho'o or you G guard it. So it just forces the guard out of my opponent easier, and it makes it whereas though I can hit magic numbers whenever I'm swinging. So I tech one of her in just because. Also the same way with the crit, if I need a soul that I have to use a Voltage Trail or Stunverse skill for, because Stunverse is an act ability and she's an act ability, I can put into the soul first, give out the power, and then use Stunverse skill, ditch her out. So it kind of pays for itself. Next, I'm running 2 Summon Lightning Dancing Princess Anastasia. I really like Anastasia in this deck. At first I was running 4 drawers, but then I decided to run 2 of the Anastasia because of Thunderstrike ability, where when she's retired from the Guardian Circle, if my opponent's at Thunderstrike 4, which I'm playing Narukami, normally going to be the case, I draw a card, and I cannot tell you how many times drawing that card has gotten me another PG or a B-Coon or a G Guardian or anything that I can use to guard, or maybe it got me a full Bronto that I needed that I was missing the turn before. So the Thunderstrike 4 ability is so good in this, and she's really good. So I would definitely recommend, if you're playing Narukami specifically with Vanquisher, you combo her in here. You get a card, you get the pretty much a PG that pays for itself, which is always good in premium. Next, I'm running 2 different kinds of Mighty Bolt Dragoon. So I'm running 2 of the G version, which goes get me the Vanquisher. So I mean, it speaks for itself. I play it, it can be a stride fodder, and it goes get me my Vanquisher. So if I have regular Vanquisher, I can go get full Bronto because it counts as Vanquisher in the deck and on the field and in my hand. And then if I don't have regular Vanquisher, I could just go get it with this one. So this is why I run 2 of that. Next, I run 2 of the V version of Mighty Bolt Dragoon. Why? Is because whenever I need to go get Jaggi shot, or if I need to go get a Hill Guardian, this comes in clutch. Plus the +5 actually makes a difference when you want to hit magic numbers, or if you want an early game rush, you can just go, hey, call this, use its skill. Oh, I ain't getting anything. All right, 8k. All right, call it another one, use its skill. Oh, I got something. All right, this card, and now 8k. So now you can get an early game rush with this. As well as if your opponent don't swing at them, your next turn or your first grade 3 turn, they can become 13k attackers or 13k boosters. Always good when hitting magic numbers in premium. Lastly, for grade 1s, I'm running 4 of the Chain Bolt Dragoon. It's a staple in this deck. You ride it, you search the top 7 for a Vanquisher, and you add it to hand. I mean, it's really good. Like, it's the main card that you want to ride into grade 1. If you don't get this card, I mean, you obviously have other grade 1s that you can go into, but this is your main grade 1 first ride. Another good ability is late game. You can bind it from hand, and then when it's bound from hand, you can play it. So it can become a booster. It can become a late game attacker. I couldn't tell you how many times, especially at regionals, where at first I didn't have a unit on a cell marker or something because of a certain situation that happens in the game, and then I use a drawing ability, and then I draw this and bind it from hand. Now I have another boost, another rear guard attacking, and just that one extra attack can pretty much get a card out of a person's hand, or it can get a problematic rear guard if need be. So your ideal grade 1 ride should always be Chain Bolt Dragoon. All right, now I'm going to go into grade 2s. I run 3 Voltage Shred. Why? Soul Blast 1, draw a card, bind a card from my hand if I have a Vanquisher Vanguard. Most of the time, your strides or your heart cards are always going to be a Vanquisher. Unless you get unlucky and you have to ride Jaggy or the Hill Guardian, then sometimes that's GG. But for the most part, you're always going to be on a Vanquisher. And then Soul Blast and draw and bind a card is always a staple in this deck, especially when you want to get the binding the full Bronto off, or you want to get the binding the rear guard off to get multiple attacks, such as binding Chatura or binding Chain Bolt Dragoon. So 3 is a good number to have. If you want to run more, there's room in the deck to run more, but I think 3 is a consistent number. Next, I run 4 Rock Climb Dragoon. The reason why I run 4 Rock Climb Dragoon over Voltage Shred is because Rock Climb don't requires me to have anything except it retiring it itself and me having a Vanquisher Vanguard. Other than that, I don't have to Soul Blast, I don't have to Counter Blast. I literally kill itself off to draw a card and bind a card from my hand. It's so free. It's it opens up the space, so if I do get a Chatura or Chain Bolt Dragoon, I can call it right in the place that it was at, so it kind of pays for itself. And again, even though it may seem like a break even, depending on the state of your hand and the state of the board, it can definitely become a plus because it's a pop. You pop your opponent's rear guard and bind it, and then you draw a card and bind a card from the hand, and you can get any type of plays and combos going off with that. So 4 Rock Climb, all because mainly it's a free skill. It's literally it don't require your opponent to have no certain rear guard presence. The only thing it requires for you to have is a Vanquisher Vanguard, which again you normally should have. Next, I run 2 Chatura. Now, I was running Chatura at more. My problem that I was seeing with running Chatura at 3 or more is because I kept having to ride Chatura. And in this deck, my ideal ride, it can be anything except Chatura. Like, just riding Chatura, just being on 8K, going against most decks, they can easily touch him. So it's like, even though a grade 1 can touch him. And that's one thing I don't want to be on. So I decided to drop him down because even though a lot of people want to bank on the bind from hand, call back, and swing skills, I pretty much use him as a sneak attack, essentially. Whereas that they're so focused on my board that they're not even thinking about Chatura. So when I do use it, they're like, oh my God, I forgot Chatura was a thing. And then it's like, yeah, now this is 33K. So Chatura at 2 is kind of there as like a secret weapon. You can run it at more. I just prefer running at 2 because I do not like riding it. Next, I run 2 Cholo. Again, another card where some people are like, hey, I should run more. You should run more Cholo, less Cholo. I run 2 Cholo because as much as this deck does not counterblast, you don't want to run into a scenario where you're just literally just counterblasting just for Cholo, because it's going to come to a point where you need at least 1 counterblast for something. Maybe Vanquisher's ability, maybe some sort of other tech card that you have in your deck, such as like Martial Arts Dragon, things of that nature. You don't want to use Cholo too much. You want to use it sparingly because most of the time he's going to be a target on the board, so you're not going to get him off that many times. If your opponent let Cholo sit there, that's just a bonus for you. But most of the time, opponents go after Cholo, so you can choose to run more, but the deck doesn't require you to run more. You can just tech in 2 of them and then just like, hey, if they stay on board, it's a problem for my opponent. If I call them early, it's my opponent's going to target it. That means other key pieces that I need on the board is going to be there for you. Say if you call like a Rock Climb and you don't use its skill, if you call a Jaggi and you don't use its skill, they're going to more than likely target Cholo. That leaves your other pieces that you need for your full Bronto plays still on board. So 2 Cholo, you use them as a meat shield, or you can use them as a weapon. Either way, Cholo is a good card to have. The last grade 2 I run is Martial Arts Dragon. Now, the reason why I run one martial arts dragon is because he gains +5 every time my attack doesn't hit. My other unit attack doesn't hit. So, I mean, late game scenario, my opponent's at 5 and I'm swinging all out. Every time they guard and it don't, their attacks don't hit, he gains +5. So he can literally sit on the rear guard circle or an additional rear guard circle and just literally just get higher, higher, and higher. And then it was at one point where I hit like 2 fronts and then my opponent wasn't letting my attacks hit and I had him at like 60, 70K one, and he just pretty much like a one punch man for me. Like I just literally have him sitting there just to punch somebody when need be, and then he has the counterblast 1, soulblast 1 ability, the Bonner card, which also is good as well. But the main reason why I tech him in is because his secondary skill. That +5 matters, especially because if you put him on a cell marker, he's 29K. Well, you put him on cell marker, he's 14 plus 10, so he's 24. But most of the time, your opponent is going to at least block 2 to 3 attacks, so that's a guaranteed +15K on him by itself, which is always good. All right, next is my grade 3s. I run 2 Jaggi shot. Jaggi is very self-explanatory. You pretty much have him as a facilitator for your soul and as a facilitator for your hand, and to get off problematic cards in the front row just so you can get his other abilities off. Put him into the soul at the end of the battle that he swings. If you have a Vanquisher Vanguard, you draw a card. And then when he swings, you can bind a card from your hand to draw a card, which is really good in the deck where you have to bind cards from your hand to get skills off. So, but remember, you have to have no rear guards in the front row. So, if your opponent has at least one, you're screwed with Jaggi Shot's ability. But normally with stun verse skill, they're not going to have a rear guard in the front row. So you should be good with Jaggi. And just going to the soul, draw a card, and then swing, draw a card. That's you just +2 for 1 card. I mean, that's really good in premium. Just watch how many cards you draw per turn, because this deck can draw out a lot. So you don't want to deck out. And I've yet to lose the deck out. I've gotten close to it. Maybe in practice I've decked out maybe once, maybe twice. I can't remember when the last time I actually lost in tournament due to a deck out. Next, I run 3 Dragoon Vanquisher. I mean, he's the key card, but a lot of people say, well, why are you running 3? Well, I have literally 8 cards that can search this guy out. If I do not get a Vanquisher, that's just literally bad luck. But I literally have 8 cards that can get a this Vanquisher card. So he's the main key piece. You counterblast 1, and you can bind a front row rear guard, and then if you have a grade 3 in the soul, both you and your opponent bind a card from your hand. I don't find myself using his second ability a lot, mainly because Stunverse does the work for me. I mean, I'm just being honest. Stunverse does the work for me. But you want to use them for a second ability, which gives the front row +10. You use Stunverse skill once, the +10 is there. And you just want to be careful, because where a lot of people mess up at is that when you use his counterblast skill, the bind a card from your hand, if your opponent has no front row rear guards and you have a front row rear guard, you have to bind a front row rear guard. So a lot of people may try to cheat you, so you want to pay attention to that. They have to bind a front row rear guard to get the bind both a card from your hand and your opponent's hand. So keep that in mind. If your opponent tries to bind a card from your hand and they don't have a front row rear guard, they cannot do it. So keep that in mind. Lastly, for grade 3s, I run 4 full Bronto. This is the main guy that you want to see, so that's why I run 4 of them. And even though I can search them out the same way with Vanquisher, I find that having at least 2 in hand, 1 that you draw and then 1 that you search out, is good, because you have a setup play for your current turn and then your next turn. And then any other full Brontos you get after that is pretty much just icing on the cake. He counts as Vanquisher, so any type of Vanquisher abilities that you need a Vanquisher Vanguard for, of course he gets. And then when placed, all your front row rear guards get +10. So remember, when you use him in combo with the other Vanquisher, the +10 that the original Vanquisher has made pretty much stays. You're just pretty much swapping the face card on your Vanguard circle. However, if your rear guards don't have any power and then you go into full Bronto, then they will get the +10. It's probably seem very simple, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen other Vanquisher players misplay that. Also, remember, if you hit a front on the original Vanquisher swing, the rear guards retain that front, but full Bronto will not when you ride over top of the Vanquisher. So he comes in 22, everybody else get the plus 10K from his ability, plus 10K from the front. So keep that in mind. He do not get the front's ability because he did not see the front. Other than that, an extra swing on the Vanguard circle is always good in premium because you get more cards out your opponent's hand, or you can cause more damage. And I can't tell you how many times that off of his swing, I hit the over trigger. So 3 swings off the Vanguard circle plus the 6 or 7 swings you can get on rear guard circle, you could pretty much devastate your opponent very quickly and very forcefully. So now I'm going to go into grade 4s. The first grade 4 is, of course, Giggle. He's the progenitor dragon. You know his active ability, Counter Blast 2, Soul Blast 1. You can swing at everything, and then he gains plus 10, and then for every hit, you counter charge 1. It's an ideal for any type of Dragon Empire deck to run Progenitor Dragon. It's a free stride. It allows you to stride for free, which is always good in premium because then you can say your stride crits for a guard. But also his active ability is really good. They used up the Counter Blast and then get the Counter Blast back, and then he gains plus 10. That's you pretty much adding pressure on all fronts. So Giggle is always a namesake in your stride zone. Next is Drachma. I know a lot of Dragon Empire decks not really running Drachma. They're running more of either a G Guardian or more of another stride that they need. Drachma to me is one of the most underrated and underappreciated Zero-Off dragons that they ever created. Simply because when you play him, you counterblast 2, and then you pretty much delete your opponent, essentially. You retire their rear guards and bind them, and you retire their Vanguard and bind them. And if you put them in a situation where they don't have any type of good Vanguard to re-ride because of his skill, you pretty much put your opponent to either a grade 0, a grade 1, a grade 2, or they, a lot of times I found out they ride the Hill Guardian, which for me, that's even a best scenario too. But the best thing about it is you get 3 cards out of your opponent's hand, you get rid of their field, you get rid of their Vanguard, which probably is a Vanguard that they essentially needs, and then he comes in plus 25K to the Vanguard. So he comes in for me 37K, and then I still get the reroute with full Bronto off. So it's like it's all fronts just really good. And then the thing about it is, yeah, with Zero Dragons, if you don't kill them, then, you know, you lose your G-Zone and everything. But with Vanquisher, it's like, all right, cool. I still have full Bronto. I still have all my attacks, attack and rear guards, and all these abilities going off. I don't need my G-Zone. So you add the pressure even if your opponent doesn't die from your Zero Dragon play. Next, I run the big dog, of course, in the G-Zone, Stunverse. What more can you say? Soul Blast 1, flip up a card. Your opponent chooses 4 rear guards from the 4 rear guards and then 4 cards from the drop zone and bind them. And then for every 4, your opponent binds a card and you draw. I mean, it's the main facilitator of the deck. I mean, literally, you draw, you gain power, you get rid of their resources, and then you still get the heart card because you de-stride. So it's like now you get the heart card's ability because you go back to your heart card, and then now it's like plus 10 because of Vanquisher, get the full Bronto ride going on. It's just all around just the main guy in the deck. If you don't have the soul for Stunverse, you ultimately can screw yourself over if you want to go that route. So make sure that your soul usage is up to par. You make sure you don't use too much. Try to switch between using Voltage Shred a lot and switching between using Rock Climber more, and then you want to make sure that you have at least 3 Stunverses. I've seen people use 2. 2 is playing a dangerous game because your opponent can survive 2. 3 is, if you go into your 3rd Stunverse, that's almost a guaranteed game. So I recommend running 3. Next, I run 1 of Voltage. I literally use Voltage as a flip up fodder. You can use Voltage, but in this day and age, if you have a Vanguard that's an on-hit ability, it's more than likely not going to hit. So you want to make sure that you have other cards that you can go into that's better. To me, voltage is just literally just there as a flip up fodder, but if you choose to use voltage, you can. I would rather never use voltage. Now, here's one of my favorite cards in the deck is vbuster. vbuster is a card that I use if my opponent's drop zone and field is not really at an optimum range where stun verse is necessary. So then I go into vbuster, and vbuster is soulblast 1. You flip up a copy of itself. The opponent chooses a rear guard, binds it, choose a card from this drop zone and bind it, and then if you have at least 2 or more rear guards over your opponent, you give 3 units plus 3. The plus 3 might not seem like a lot, but it makes a 9K hit a 12K. It makes a 12K hit a 13K. You see what I'm saying? So it makes you get over that hump of force that you may come across, because force decks is still strong in premium. So you don't want to discount them. You want to make sure that your numbers can hit the 13K. 12s, of course, you're going to hit, but you want to make sure your numbers can hit the 13K. I built this deck to make sure that I can touch force numbers and not just easily graze them, but make sure that I can punch them as good as possible. So, and you still get the full Bronto playoff because he is a vanquisher. So keep that in mind. Now, the reason why I'm still running vmax and vbuster, you'll see in a minute. The next strat that I use is confogurate. I like confogurate. The main reason why I like confogurate is because it's Thunderstrike 10 skill, allows you to gain plus a drive, plus a crit, and then your opponent chooses the same number of rear guards as you have in your G zone face up, and then they bind them, and then you get plus 1,000. Your front gets plus 1,000 for every card face up in a bind zone. So you can punch big. You can get an extra drive, so 4 drives is always good, and then you go in for Bronto, you get pretty much 5 drives, and then the critical. So confogurate I think is an ideal card that you need to have in your G zone. It can facilitate the bind zone for you, and it adds pressure for your board to give to your opponent, and it adds pressure with the drive and the crit. So 4 drives, extra crit, plus 1,000 for every card in the bind zone. Really good card. Next, I run vmax. Now vmax is such a tech card because if you use it too early, it's not that good. The reason why I love keeping vmax in this deck is because it can deal your opponent damage. So at the end of the battle, if your opponent is at Thunderstrike 5, and they have no rear guards, you counterblast 2 and you deal them a damage no matter where their damage gauge is. So I've killed people with this card so many times because they if my opponent's at 4 or 5, of course they're gonna perfect guard for the vanguard, but they don't think about the rear. So he punches all the rear guards for every face up vanquisher in the G zone. So that's why I still run vmax and vbuster. vbuster and voltage, because now I flip up voltage, and then if I use vbuster skill, now that's 3, so I'm automatically guaranteed swinging at the vanguard plus 3 rear guards. But most of the time my opponents may, at this point when I'm using him, may have 1 or 2, but if they're at 5, they're not worrying about blocking for the rear. So that's how you can sneak this in and be like, all right, cool, you didn't block for the rear, counterblast 2, deal your damage. If they don't hit a heal or over trigger, they're pretty much dead. And even if they hit the hill, you still have your triple drive going off, and you still have the full Bronto re-rod going too. So you still have multiple times to kill them. So even if they hit the hill and they go to 22 or 23, if you hit any triggers, especially if you hit a front, you're still going to be able to kill your opponent more than likely. You just want to be wary at your opponent's hand size, because if you do this skill and then they hit the hill and then they still got like 5 to 7 cards in their hand, they're more than likely going to survive that turn. So he's such a situational card, but he's such a good card when you use it in the perfect situation. Lastly, I run the GB8. The reason why I still run the GB8 is because when he's placed, I retire all regards of all fighters, and then I bind all my opponent's cards in the drop zone. And then all my units get plus 2K for each card in the fight and both fighters bind zone. So there's a rare time in Narukami where you're gonna be binding your cards from either your hand or drop zone. Most of the time it's only going to be doing when you're trying to go into the full Bronto play. But a lot of times, if I'm binding anything, I'm binding full Bronto or I'm binding Chatura or Chain Bolt. So the only time I'm ever going to have anything in my bind zone is for when I use the 1G guard that I have that does it. Other than that, you literally do it to get your opponent's bond zone completely out of there, especially if you're going against the Order Colony matchup. I found myself where at first, when I was doing practice and leading up to regionals, I didn't have it in there. And then as I'm playing, I'm getting through my matches, I was starting to realize that during practice, I can get the GB8 with this deck. So then at some point, I was like, all right, let me put the GB8 in there. And leading up to the tournament, the GB8 has definitely come in handy. So I definitely consider tacking this in as much as possible. I'm going to run through the G zone real quick. Bulwark Dragon. He gains plus 10k if your opponent's at least Thunderstrike 3. So he's just a 25k shield. But the secondary ability is what you want to use him for, because if your opponent, for every 4 cards in your opponent's bond zone, you can retire rested rear guards in the front row. So he's pretty much a pseudo denial Griffin that similar to what Kagero has, but he's freer, and you don't have to worry about you can get more cards out of there. I run 2 MP Dragons. This is pretty much our main card where we get rid of we can bind a card, and then if you have 2 or less rear guards than your opponent has to choose a card and retire it. Pretty straightforward. And then lastly, we have 1 Brahma. Brahma, he's a good first G guard. You bind 2 different grades from your drop zone, he gains plus 10. Another 25k shield. But we will have better G guards coming out in the next premium collection. So that's all I have for my Vanquisher deck. If you want any type of tips, or you just hit up the comment section down below, and I can give you the tips that I use. Other than that, stay tuned for the next deck profile and more content. Thank you.